December 18th, 1944, Camp Hearn, Texas. Obergefreiter Klaus Hartmann held the letter from his wife with trembling hands, the thin paper worn from crossing the Atlantic through Red Cross channels. The words blurred as tears filled his eyes, but not from the sentiment, from the impossible contradiction between what she described and what sat on the metal tray before him. "My dearest Klaus," she had written, "we have not seen real meat in 8 weeks. Yesterday, Frau Müller's daughter caught a rat in the cellar. She boiled it with turnip greens. I did not judge her. The children cried from hunger again last night. The ration cards promised 250 grams of bread daily, but the bakery has flour only twice a week. I sold my mother's silver spoons for 2 eggs. Eggs, Klaus. I paid a month's worth of ration coupons for 2 eggs." On his tray sat a piece of grilled steak, thick as 2 fingers, mashed potatoes swimming in butter, green beans with bacon, white bread 3 slices with real butter and strawberry jam, apple pie for dessert, fresh milk in a glass pitcher. Hartmann looked around the mess hall at his fellow prisoners, 80 men from the 21st Panzer Division, captured in Normandy 6 months earlier. Every one of them eating better than they had eaten as soldiers, better than they had eaten as civilians before the war, better than German generals ate now, if the letters from home told truth. Unterfeldwebel Werner Koch sat across from him, mechanically chewing his steak while reading his own letter. When he finished, he carefully folded the paper and set it beside his still full tray. "My son is 6 years old," Koch said quietly. "My wife writes that he has forgotten what chocolate tastes like." He asked her if the picture of food in his storybook was real or imaginary. What these men didn't know, what none of the 371,683 German prisoners in American camps could fully comprehend, was that this disparity between enemy abundance and homeland starvation would accomplish what Allied propaganda never could: the complete demolition of every Nazi promise, every party slogan, every claim of German superiority, not through words, but through the undeniable mathematics of protein and calories, delivered 3 times daily on metal trays. The collapse had begun gradually, almost imperceptibly. When the first German prisoners arrived in America during 1943, captured from Rommel's Afrika Korps in Tunisia, they expected harsh treatment. Nazi indoctrination had prepared them for cruelty from their captors. The Geneva Convention required adequate food, but adequate could mean many things. What they received instead was abundance that contradicted 3 years of propaganda about American weakness and scarcity. The first meal served to German prisoners at the Norfolk Processing Center became legendary in its own right. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes with gravy, corn on the cob, fresh bread with butter, and apple pie. Coffee with real sugar and fresh milk, available without limit. Many prisoners initially refused to eat, certain it was poisoned or a psychological trick before harsher treatment began. Oberarzt Dr. Friedrich Bauer, a captured medical officer from the 164th Light Division, examined the food with professional suspicion before taking his first tentative bite. In a letter that survived censorship and reached his colleagues in Germany months later, he described the experience. "I ate slowly, expecting my stomach to rebel after months of inadequate rations in Africa. Instead, I felt strength returning with each bite. This was no subsistence meal. This was how I ate before the war, in peacetime, in prosperity." The U.S. Army's policy regarding prisoner rations was straightforward and documented in Quartermaster Corps regulations. German prisoners of war were to receive the same rations as American troops of equivalent rank. For enlisted men, this meant the standard Army ration of approximately 4,000 calories daily. Officers received slightly enhanced rations, matching American officer messes. What this meant in practical terms shattered German expectations. Breakfast included eggs, bacon or sausage, pancakes or toast, butter, jam, coffee with sugar and cream, and fresh fruit or juice. Lunch brought soup, sandwiches with real meat, vegetables, dessert and milk. Dinner featured a main course of beef, pork or chicken, multiple vegetable sides, bread, butter, dessert and beverages. By December 1944, when Hartmann received his wife's letter, the contrast with Germany had reached catastrophic proportions. German civilian rations had collapsed from the already inadequate levels of 1943. The official ration cards, when honoured, provided 1,600 calories daily for normal consumers. Heavy labourers received 2,400. Children under 6 received 1,200. But these were theoretical allocations. Actual availability was far lower. Bread rations in Berlin that December averaged 180 grams daily when available, down from 250 grams promised. Meat appeared on ration cards for 150 grams weekly, but butcher shops had no meat to distribute. Fats and oils, once 62 grams weekly, had dropped to 25 grams monthly. Potatoes, the staple that kept millions alive, were increasingly unavailable as transportation networks collapsed under Allied bombing. The letters arriving at American prison camps throughout late 1944 and early 1945 documented a civilization in nutritional collapse. Gefreiter Hans Müller received word from Hamburg in January 1945. The children searched through garbage for potato peelings. Yesterday they found a dead pigeon. We made soup. I cannot describe the taste. We ate it anyway. Feldwebel Otto Krebs, whose family lived near Cologne, learned in February that his mother had died of starvation, not suddenly, not dramatically, but slowly over 6 months as her body consumed itself. She had been giving her rations to his sister's children. His sister wrote, "She weighed less than 40 kilos when she died. The neighbors said this was common now. We have become a nation of ghosts." The most devastating letters came from cities under sustained bombing. In Dresden, in Hamburg, in Berlin, civilian food distribution had ceased functioning in any meaningful sense. Survivors searched through rubble for buried food stores. They ate wallpaper paste boiled with water. They trapped rats and sparrows. They boiled grass and tree bark into soups that provided no nutrition but filled stomachs temporarily. Against this backdrop of German civilian starvation, the meals served in American prison camps took on significance beyond simple sustenance. They became daily evidence of American industrial capacity, proof of abundance so vast it could be extended even to enemies, demonstrations that Nazi ideology had lied about everything. The psychological impact manifested in different ways among different prisoners. Some, like Hartmann, experienced immediate cognitive dissonance. How could the decadent, weak Americans have such abundance while the master race starved? Others rationalized initially, claiming the good treatment was temporary propaganda that would end once the prisoners' usefulness expired. But the abundance never ended. It continued meal after meal, week after week, month after month. At Camp Concordia, Kansas, the Thanksgiving dinner of November 1944 included turkey with stuffing, cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, gravy, green beans, fresh rolls with butter, pumpkin pie, and coffee. The Christmas meal exceeded even that. German prisoners, many of whom hadn't seen such abundance since childhood, sat stunned before plates laden with food their families would have considered fantasy. Lieutenant Hermann Goetz, captured with the 10th Panzer Division, kept a secret diary that American censors never discovered. His entries from late 1944 documented his psychological transformation. November 28th. We ate turkey today for the American holiday. The guard told me this is what every American family eats on this day. Not just soldiers, not just the wealthy, but every family. I pretended to believe him. But I have seen too much. The food trucks arrive daily. The warehouses overflow. This is not propaganda. This is their reality. December 12th. Letter from home. My wife describes eating soup made from potato peels and flour paste. She weighs 48 kilos now, down from 62 before the war. I ate steak and potatoes for dinner. I could not finish it. I tried to save some to send home, but of course this is impossible. I am betraying my family with every meal. December 25th. Christmas. We had roast beef, 8 vegetables, 3 desserts. The guards gave us extra rations because of the holiday. I walked outside afterward and vomited, not from the food, but from the realization. We were lied to about everything. The Americans are not weak. They are not starving. They are not losing. We are. The camp canteens, where prisoners could purchase additional food with the wages earned from labor, provided further evidence of American abundance. For 80 cents per day of work, later raised to $1, prisoners could buy items that had vanished from German shops years earlier. Candy bars, 5 cents. Coca-Cola, 5 cents. Ice cream, 10 cents. Cigarettes, 15 cents per pack. At Camp Hearn, the canteen stocked 20 different types of candy, 8 varieties of soft drinks, fresh fruit when available, crackers and cookies, canned goods, and tobacco products. The inventory matched small-town American stores, making no concessions to wartime scarcity. German prisoners with American wages in their pockets confronted consumer abundance they had never known, even in peacetime Germany. Stabsfeldwebel Ernst Wagner worked in the camp kitchen at Fort Robinson, Nebraska, a position that gave him intimate knowledge of American food logistics. In letters to his brother, a logistics officer in the Wehrmacht, he described what he witnessed. They deliver food 3 times weekly. The trucks bring more than we can possibly eat. Fresh meat, fresh vegetables, fresh bread daily. The waste is staggering. We throw away more food each day than a German infantry company receives in a week. I calculated the numbers. This camp holds 3,000 prisoners. The monthly food delivery exceeds 400 tons. This includes 15,000 pounds of beef, 8,000 pounds of pork, 20,000 pounds of chicken, 50,000 eggs, 10,000 gallons of milk for prisoners, for enemies, while you write that your men are eating horse meat and hardtack. The psychological warfare impact of this food disparity was recognized by American intelligence officers, though it was never formally implemented as policy. Major Paul Newland, serving with the Special Projects Division that oversaw prisoner re-education, wrote in a December 1944 report to the Provost Marshal General's office, "The food situation accomplishes more than any propaganda program could achieve. Every meal is an argument against Nazism. Every full stomach undermines the ideology that promised prosperity through conquest. We are defeating Nazi beliefs with roast beef and apple pie." The camp newspapers, published by prisoners under American supervision, began reflecting this transformation. Der Ruf, published at Fort Kearny, Rhode Island, ran an article in January 1945 titled "The Paradox of Captivity," written by former Nazi journalist Kurt Schnabel, now questioning everything he had believed. The piece stated, "We sit in prison camps, defeated enemies, and eat better than victorious German soldiers. We are captives, and we are healthier than free German civilians. This paradox demands explanation that Nazi ideology cannot provide." The mail censorship system, while removing military intelligence and prohibiting detailed location information, generally allowed prisoners to describe their living conditions. This was deliberate policy. The US War Department wanted Germans at home to know that prisoners were treated well, both to encourage surrender and to ensure reciprocal treatment of American prisoners. But the censors couldn't have anticipated the full impact of these letters reaching Germany. When Hartmann's letters reached his wife describing prison camp meals, she initially thought he was using code, or that the censors had fabricated the letters as propaganda. Only when multiple letters arrived, and when other families received similar descriptions, did German civilians begin accepting the impossible truth. Their imprisoned men ate better than they did. The psychological impact on German civilians receiving these letters was profound and documented by post-war sociologists. Dr. Klaus Fischer, studying German morale collapse for his 1972 dissertation, interviewed hundreds of German women who had received letters from prisoner husbands. Their responses were remarkably consistent. "We felt abandoned," one woman from Munich reported. "Our men were safe, fed and healthy while we starved." We understood it wasn't their fault, but the resentment was unavoidable. The system that had promised us prosperity had delivered our families to starvation while feeding our enemies. By early 1945, some German prisoners began sending food packages to Germany, a reversal that would have been inconceivable a year earlier. Using camp wages and Red Cross assistance, prisoners purchased American products to mail home: coffee, chocolate, canned goods, dried fruit and other items unavailable in Germany for years. International Red Cross records confirm approximately 11,000 such packages were sent from American camps to Germany in early 1945. The arrival of packages in Germany from imprisoned relatives completed the psychological inversion. German families opened parcels from America containing food they hadn't seen in years, sent by family members who were supposedly suffering in captivity. The propaganda claiming Americans were barbaric and German victory inevitable could not survive this evidence. Every tin of coffee, every chocolate bar, every package of dried fruit was proof that the Nazi narrative was fundamentally false. The transformation in prisoner attitudes toward the war became evident in multiple ways. At Camp Shelby, Mississippi, attendance at Nazi-oriented discussion groups dropped from 60% of prisoners in mid-1943 to less than 10% by early 1945. At Camp Concordia, Kansas, enrollment in English language classes increased from 200 prisoners in 1943 to over 1,800 in 1945 out of 3,000 total prisoners. Men who had expected to return to a victorious Germany were now planning for a very different future. The most fanatical Nazis in the camps initially tried to maintain discipline and ideology through intimidation. Pro-Nazi prisoners at several camps assaulted fellow prisoners who expressed doubts about German victory or admiration for American abundance. At Camp Tonkawa, Oklahoma, in November 1943, fanatical prisoners beat Private Johannes Kunze to death for expressing pro-American sentiments. The murder shocked both prisoners and guards, leading to increased segregation of hardline Nazis from the general prisoner population. But by 1945, even the most dedicated Nazis faced undeniable reality. When Hitler's death was announced and Germany surrendered in May 1945, most German prisoners in American camps expressed relief rather than defiance. They had witnessed too much American capacity, lived too long in American abundance, and received too many desperate letters from home to maintain faith in Nazi ideology. The agricultural work programs that employed over 100,000 German prisoners by 1944 provided additional education in American abundance. Prisoners working on farms across the Midwest, the South, and the West witnessed agricultural productivity that exceeded German achievement by orders of magnitude. Single American farms produced more wheat than entire German counties. Orchards discarded fruit for minor blemishes that would have been treasured in Germany. Slaughterhouses processed cattle by the thousands daily. Unteroffizier Franz Weber, working on a wheat farm in Kansas, wrote to his brother in March 1945, "This single farm harvested more grain last fall than our entire village region produces in a good year. One man with machinery does the work of 50 German farmers with horses. They feed this grain to cattle because they have too much to sell. While you write that bread rations are cut again, I watch them feed bread-quality wheat to animals." The dairy farms particularly stunned German prisoners accustomed to severe milk rationing. At a Wisconsin dairy farm employing prisoner labor, German soldiers watched American farmers pour excess milk into fields because it exceeded their quota allowance. The waste, mandated by agricultural price supports, demonstrated abundance so vast that destruction was preferable to market disruption. For prisoners from a nation where a child's milk ration was 250 milliliters weekly, the sight of thousands of gallons poured onto ground was incomprehensible. German prisoners working in food processing facilities witnessed the full scale of American agricultural production. At a Campbell's soup factory in New Jersey, prisoners observed production lines that processed more tomatoes in a day than most German factories handled in a month. At meatpacking plants in Chicago, the volume of beef processed hourly exceeded Germany's entire meat ration distribution for major cities. The liberation of concentration camps in 1945 added a horrifying dimension to the food disparity revelations. When American forces showed German prisoners newsreel footage of starving concentration camp survivors, many prisoners experienced complete psychological collapse. They had known at some level about the camps, though most claimed ignorance of the full extent. But seeing footage of skeletal survivors being fed by American troops, knowing that their own government had starved millions deliberately while they themselves ate well as prisoners, shattered the last remnants of national pride. Oberleutnant Walter Müller, watching the footage at Camp Shelby in May 1945, wrote in his diary, "We ate steak while our government murdered millions through starvation. We lived in comfort while German citizens, German soldiers, German children starved. But we are not the villains of this story. The villains fed us lies about American weakness while creating a system so evil that our enemies treated us better than our own leaders treated our people." The post-war reckoning was documented by occupation authorities as German prisoners returned home between 1945 and 1948. Many prisoners had gained weight in American captivity, arriving in Germany visibly healthier than when they were captured. They returned to families devastated by malnutrition, to cities where starvation continued for years after the war ended. The physical contrast between returned prisoners and German civilians provided visible evidence of the food disparity. Medical examinations of returning prisoners revealed the health impact of American rations. Average weight gain among long-term prisoners was 15 to 25 pounds. Dental health had improved due to access to American dental care. Diseases related to malnutrition, common among German soldiers and civilians, were absent in prisoners. They returned to a population where malnutrition-related illness was epidemic. The psychological transformation of German prisoners through food abundance was so thorough that Allied occupation authorities recruited former prisoners as community leaders during Reconstruction. These men, who had witnessed American capacity firsthand, understood that Germany's future lay in cooperation with the West rather than continued resistance. Their testimony about American treatment, including the food they received, helped legitimize the occupation among skeptical German civilians. In 1950, a German sociologist named Dr. Heinrich Hartmann, no relation to Klaus Hartmann, published a comprehensive study titled Abundance and Ideology: The Transformation of German POWs in America. Based on interviews with 500 former prisoners, the study documented how food disparity had accomplished what propaganda never could. 92% of interviewed former prisoners stated that treatment in American camps, particularly the food, had fundamentally changed their political views. 87% credited their experience as prisoners with teaching them that democracy could provide prosperity that totalitarianism never achieved. The study included powerful testimony from former prisoners about specific moments when the food disparity had shattered their Nazi indoctrination. Feldwebel Otto Krebs, whose mother had starved to death while he ate well in captivity, provided the most haunting account. "I blamed myself for years. How could I eat while she starved? But eventually I understood. The fault was not mine for eating what my captors provided. The fault was the system that sent us to conquer others' food rather than producing our own. The fault was the ideology that promised prosperity through war and delivered starvation through defeat." By 1955, West Germany had achieved remarkable economic recovery, the beginning of the Wirtschaftswunder, the economic miracle. Historians credit Marshall Plan aid, currency reform, and good governance. But they often overlook another factor: the hundreds of thousands of German men who had witnessed American abundance firsthand as prisoners of war, who returned home knowing that prosperity came from production, not conquest, from democracy, not dictatorship, from free markets, not controlled economies. Many former prisoners rose to prominence in post-war Germany. They brought with them lessons learned in American prison camps, including the profound understanding that a system which could feed its enemies demonstrated strength beyond military might. The democracy that could waste food while fighting a global war possessed advantages that totalitarian efficiency could never match. The letters that had revealed the food disparity became historical documents. Archives in Germany and America preserve thousands of these communications, testimony to one of history's strangest paradoxes. Enemy soldiers eating better than their own civilians, prisoners living better than their own soldiers, captivity providing security that freedom could not. Klaus Hartmann returned to Germany in 1946 to a wife who weighed 45 kilograms and children he barely recognized. His first meal at home was turnip soup with a small piece of black bread. He ate it slowly, remembering the steaks and potatoes of Camp Herne, feeling guilt and gratitude in equal measure. He never forgot that he had survived because his enemies fed him while his own government let his family starve. In 1985, at a reunion of former prisoners in Austin, Texas, Hartmann, then 71 years old, spoke to a room of American and German veterans. "We came to America as enemies," he said. "We expected cruelty and received kindness. We expected deprivation and received abundance. Every meal was a lesson that we had been lied to, that the Americans we were taught to despise were more humane than the leaders we were taught to obey. You defeated us twice. First in battle, which we understood. Second at the dinner table, which we never forgot." The final irony of the German POW food story is that it accomplished what decades of propaganda could not. It proved that democratic societies, when functioning properly, created abundance that authoritarian systems could only promise. It demonstrated that the measure of a civilization was not how it treated its elite, but how it treated everyone, including its enemies. And it revealed that sometimes the most powerful weapons were not bullets and bombs, but steak and potatoes, served with dignity to defeated foes who had never imagined such abundance existed.